Good day each and everyone. My name is Arsaida Salendab, together with Sandra Pandian, your discussant. Our topic for today is all about reproduction of non-flowering plants. But before we proceed to our main topic, let's read the learning objectives first. Learning objectives. A. Define and describe the common example of non-flowering plant. B. Discuss confidently how this plant reproduced. And C. Multimedia presentation on how spore-bearing and cone-bearing plants ensure their survival. And now, let's proceed to our main discussion. Non-flowering plants are those plants do not ever produce flower. Some non-flowering plants are called gymnosperm. These still produce seeds, but others use spore for reproduction. These are plants that do not have flower, but even though they do not have flower, many non-flowering plants are make seeds. Non-flowering plants are divided into two main groups: those that reproduce with this like particle called spore, and those that use seeds to reproduce. Spore-bearing plants are simple or primitive plants. For example of this is that mosses and fern. This plant release thousands of tiny spores which are spread by wind and water. All spore-bearing plants need plenty of moisture to reproduce, and growth must live in damp or shady areas. The second group of non-flowering plants produce seeds. This group include spires and cedar trees.
So next is spore-bearing plants. A parent plant seeds out tiny spores containing special set of chromosomes. These spores do not contain an embryo or food stores. Fertilization of the spores takes place away from the parent, usually in a damp place. An embryo is formed and a new plant grows from it. So, spore-bearing plants are plants that produce by producing spores, which are tiny cells that contain a set of chromosomes. These spores are different from seeds, which contain an embryo and food stores. The parent plant produces spores which are released into the environment. These spores can be carried away by wind, water, or other means, and can germinate in a new location.
Now, let's proceed to the life cycle of cactus. Life cycle of cactus. In nature, cacti often reproduce when segments or pads fall from the parent's cactus and root where they touch the ground. In order for a cactus to reproduce, this pollen must fertilize and exhale in the female part of the plant.
Next is the life cycle of an aloe vera. So, aloe vera is a spiky cactus like xerophytes. It is a clump-forming perennial plant with a thick fibrous roots which produce large basal leaves. Usually 12 to 16 per plant, weighing up to 1.5 kg when mature. The plant matures when it is about 4 years old and has a lifespan of 12 years. Next is the life cycle of mosses. Mosses are tiny plants that grow as a green carpet in moist areas. They are called non-vascular plants since they don't have true roots that absorb water or stems that transport it to the other parts of the plant. Instead, moisture is absorbed through the entire body. Next is the life cycle of ferns. Ferns are highly valued in the gardening circles for their feathering fronds. Unlike mosses, ferns are vascular plants and have roots and stems that conduct water. However, the stems of ferns, except in the case of tree ferns, are rhizomes that grow along the ground or underground. So the only part visible is the top of leaves. What is most interesting about these leaves is that They do double duty as the reproductive structure of these plants.
Cone-bearing plants. Cone-bearing plants have two types of cones, the female and the male cones. Reproduction begins when one of the pollen grain from inside a pollen sac on the male cone float through the air to the growth from the pollen grain toward the female ovule. Pine tree. A pine cone is an organ of the pine tree containing its reproductive structure. Pine trees are only one of the conifer or cone-bearing plants. Others include cedar, firs, cypresses, and redwoods. And now, let's proceed to cedar trees. Cedar work well as windbreak, helping to protect other trees and plants from the wind. Windbreak also blocks snow. The tree also keep valuable topsoil in place when the tree acts as windbreak along the edge of agricultural land. Cedar trees also protect the soil from being corroded by water. Cone-bearing plants are pollen and seeds. Cone-bearing plants produce spore and gametes in addition to pollen and seeds. However, spore-bearing plants are limited to spore and gametes and produce no pollen or no seeds.
Spores are cells that are very small. In fact, they are microscopic. You can see them in your eyes. The spores, when you release into the water, go away from the plant. When the spores land in certain places, they can form new cells and eventually a new plant will grow. Plants with spores only have a single cell and they grow. The example is ferns. Live in damp areas do not have real roots or leaves.